If it's Monday, a federal judge orders former President Trump to stand trial the day before Super Tuesday, setting the special counsel's 2020 election interference case on a collision course with the race for the White House. Plus, President Biden condemns the racially motivated shooting in Jacksonville, Florida, that killed 3 and left the community reeling, as officials identify the 3 black victims and release new details on the gunman and his hate-fueled ideology. And bracing for Idalia, Florida declares a state of emergency. Disaster crews hit the ground, and Governor DeSantis leaves the campaign trail as the state prepares for a potential Category 3 hurricane to slam its Gulf Coast. Welcome to Meet the Press Now. I'm Ryan Nobles in for Kristen Welker on another remarkable day here in Washington, as a federal judge has just scheduled one of the most important trials in our democracy's history, alongside one of the most important days on next year's presidential calendar. Following a contentious hearing between federal prosecutors and Donald Trump's attorneys, Judge Tanya Chutkan ruled that the former president will stand trial on March 4th of next year to face criminal charges that he orchestrated a conspiracy to overturn the 2020 election. So here it is, folks. Look at this. The current legal calendar facing the Republican frontrunner, with today's trial date now the 3rd confirmed criminal trial set to begin in 2024. Tangled between the start of the Republican presidential primary in Iowa and the Republican convention ahead of Election Day. Not only that, but today's news puts the start of Trump's election interference trial on the eve of Super Tuesday, which is typically the single biggest day of the nominating contest. Now, we should note that Judge Chutkan made her ruling after a hearing in which Trump attorney John Lauro accused special counsel Jack Smith's prosecutors of seeking what he called a show trial, while insisting that Trump's attorneys won't have enough time to prepare. All of this playing out amid another key legal hearing tied to the criminal case of election interference in Georgia, as Mr. Trump's former White House chief of staff and co-defendant Mark Meadows testified in court as he tries to move his case out of Fulton County to federal court. For more now, I'm joined by NBC News Justice and Intelligence correspondent Ken Delanian, NBC News correspondent Blaine Alexander in Atlanta, and Tim Hempy, the former U.S. attorney who served, of course, as the lead investigator for the January 6th Select Committee. So, Ken, let's start with you. How the heck is all of this going to work? How are they going to schedule all of this and make it happen?
Well, first of all, Ryan, it's important to note that this date is not set in stone. There's every reason to believe there will be additional delays. But it's deeply significant that the judge ruled that essentially this trial is going to happen at some point before the election, and maybe even before the Republicans reach a decision on a nominee, which is huge. And the judge reached that decision by having very little patience for the arguments from Donald Trump's defense team today that, look, there's just so much discovery, so many documents we have to go through that we need 2 years to prepare. So their proposal of April 2026 was a non-starter for Judge Tanya Chutkan. She said that right away, and she begged them essentially to offer a more reasonable alternative, and they just refused to do it. And so what she ended up with was a date that was really just 2 months distant from the January proposal of Jacksonville.
And you mentioned this could still get pushed back a little bit more, but by setting a marker in March, is she actually probably zeroing in on maybe May or June for the actual start of this trial?
Your guess is as good as mine on that. But, you know, for example, there are things that can delay it. Like Trump attorney John Lauro today said that he was going to argue and make a motion that Donald Trump is immune through presidential immunity from these criminal charges. That's the kind of thing that could be appealed all the way up to the Supreme Court before there is a trial. So that's going to take some time. That could delay things. There are other issues that could delay things. And so, you know, we don't really know when this is going to go to trial. But on this timetable, it seems likely that it would be at least before the November 2024 election.
So was this decision then a victory for the special counsel?
Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely.
100%.
Explain why.
Because the judge really adopted their view of the case, which is that, you know, that there's a reasonable time frame here for the defense to get ready that's not 2 years, and that they don't need to actually read, you know, 12.8 million pages of documents that have been turned over. You know, we live in an electronic age. They can do keyword searches. And she also made it very clear in a number of occasions inside the courtroom that she's going to treat Donald Trump like any other defendant. He doesn't get any special deference because he's running for president. In fact, he's like any other prominent defendant, a CEO or someone with a busy schedule. He's going to have to adjust his schedule to meet her schedule. And she also said that she had communicated with the judge in New York about, deconflicting, because he's also set a trial date for March, and it sounds like they're going to work that out. And
your point that he's not going to be treated any differently than any other defendant was definitely a point she made, but she did make note of the fact that he has all these other legal issues. You mentioned the situation in Manhattan. Is she going to take into account all the other things that he's dealing with as well in terms of his legal problems and other courtrooms he may need to sit in?
She will, but it seems like she's got first position now. She's kind of out ahead of the other judges in terms of setting this early trial date. And a lot of legal experts believe that this is the case most likely to go to trial first. We're all focusing on the Atlanta case because that just happened.
Right.
That's a complex case with a lot of defendants and a lot of room for delays. And it's a state prosecutor who has a history of having trouble picking a jury in a racketeering case. So I'm not confident that that case, for example, would go ahead of this very similar case in Washington.
Okay, Ken, you're setting up Blaine Alexander now, who is in Atlanta, to talk more about the situation there. Of course, Mark Meadows testifying today, actually on the stand. Do we have any sense as to what came out of today's hearing as to whether or not this case is going to be moved to federal court?
Well, we do know, Ryan, that there are still a lot left to go. We know that Mark Meadows just wrapped up his testimony not too long ago. He spent the better part of 5 hours on the stand, and that's notable because we started the day not even knowing whether or not he was going to come down to Georgia. So the fact that we saw him walk into that federal courtroom and then saw him stay on the stand for about 5 hours was remarkable in and of itself. So we know right now Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger is on the stand. He's answering questions, of course, about that infamous phone call from the then president to him right now. But there are 4 people who were subpoenaed to testify today. We've only gotten through part of one of them, so I would suspect that this is still going to likely go for some time. We don't expect the judge to rule from the bench on this, so we still have some days to wait and see what the decision is on this.
And you touched on this a little bit, Blaine, but maybe expand upon it even more. I mean, there was a chance Mark Meadows wasn't even going to be in the courtroom. How surprised were folks paying attention to this hearing that he actually got on the witness stand?
I think it was very notable. Remember, he was the one who was fighting the most vigorously to avoid having to surrender at the Fulton County Jail. So really, he was trying to stop himself from coming down to Georgia almost in any capacity in the first place. So the fact that obviously that request was denied, he turned himself into the jail just like all of the other co-defendants. But yes, there was a lot of question among those who were covering this, who were watching this very closely, as to what role he was going to play in today's hearing. So hearing from him, though, on the stand certainly was notable because we heard from him for the first time in his own words about a number of the things that we knew the DA was looking into and ultimately made their way into that indictment. Right?
Yeah, so many people have wanted to hear his perspective. This was the first time since this controversy really began. We also got some news about the former president. His arraignment now expected to take place on September 6th in Georgia. What could we expect to happen on that day?
Ryan, we can expect a mighty long day on September 6th. That's because it's not just the former president. He kind of kicks things off. His is set for 9:30 that morning, but then every few minutes thereafter into the afternoon, we are seeing defendant after defendant after defendant set to go before a judge for their own arraignments. So we're talking about a rather lengthy day. The hanging questions, of course, in all of this is what will those arraignments look like? Will the former president or any of the defendants actually appear in person? Is virtual still on the table, as we had been told for quite some time that it is, or will they waive their appearances altogether? Those are all the questions that remain to be seen. But as it's stacked right now, September 6th at 9:30 a.m. is when the former president is set to go before a judge here in Georgia.
Okay, Blaine Alexander, Ken Delaney, thanks to both of you. Let's bring in Tim now to get his perspective on all of this. So, Tim, are you confident that Donald Trump's D.C. trial is going to take place on or around the date that was set today by Judge Chutkan, or could something delay it?
On or around, yes, absolutely. Look, the Federal Speedy Trial Act provides a right for both sides to have a trial within 70 days or up to 6 months thereafter if it's a particularly complex case. It sounds like Judge Chutkan just essentially extended this to the very end of that statutory period, right? The Federal Speedy Trial Act contemplates a trial right away if the defendant or the government wants it and there's no impediment, or at most up to 6 months later. She's applying that standard. It's been clear from the beginning, since the very first proceeding before Judge Chutkan, or even the magistrate judge before Judge Chutkan, that she's determined to move this case along. There's a vital public interest in a speedy resolution. Today, she noted that a lot of the information that will be presented in that case has been public, going back to our hearings or even before with some of the reporting. So, yes, I think it's absolutely clear that barring something really unexpected, that trial is going to happen close in time to the March 4th trial date that she set today.
So to that end, did you get any sense of how Judge Chutkan will handle this case moving forward based on what you saw happen today?
Look, she's a no-nonsense judge. She's very smart, very capable, and very experienced. And I think she's demonstrated that thus far by holding lawyers to timeframes, setting deadlines, expecting briefing, resolving cases quickly. I think she will be resistant to anything that is designed to delay. And I think the other factor that plays into this, Ryan, is that the president's really incendiary public statements that have the potential to impact a jury pool or put parties and witnesses to the case at risk actually are a good argument to hasten trial. The sooner we get this case to trial, the sort of more you're minimizing the potential damage of his pretrial statement. So all of this is contributing to her moving the case very, very quickly.
And one of the arguments that the Trump legal team has made is that they just don't have enough time to go through all the discovery, terabytes of information that they need to go through. But the judge told John Lauro, the Trump attorney, that the grand jury investigation has been public knowledge since last September, that his lawyers should have been reviewing these documents and preparing for this indictment. Does that seem fair, especially since Lauro himself has only been Trump's attorney for a few months?
Yes, absolutely. It's fair. Again, what the judge wants to make sure is that the defendant's team has an adequate opportunity to understand the evidence that will be presented against them. It sounds like the government has already completed discovery, has provided everything and then some that the law requires them to disclose in advance. And the key thing that Judge Chutkan relied upon today is that a lot of those facts have been public knowledge for some time. All of our materials, for example, the select committee's information, which really forms the spine of the factual allegations in this case, were made public in very early January. So there isn't a lot in the discovery material, I expect, that is new to the president's defense team.
Speaking of your work on the January 6th Select Committee, let's turn to Georgia now. Mark Meadows took the stand, answering questions that I know your committee and your investigators desperately wanted to ask him and never got that chance. Was it risky for him to take the stand today?
It's certainly rare, Ryan, for a defendant in a criminal case to take the stand in a pretrial hearing. It suggests to me that the Meadows defense team considers this to be a pretty significant and important motion, and they're putting their best case forward on the motion, even if it makes it a little bit more difficult for them at trial. And the line Meadows is trying to draw seems to be, hey, I'm doing all of this in my professional capacity because it's my responsibility to monitor what the president is doing. The problem is that he did a lot more than monitor. He actively participated in the call to Brad Raffensperger, facilitating calls on behalf of the president. It sounds from the reporting about his testimony that he paints himself as this sort of neutral observer, that is, it's in his professional interest to keep track of what the president is doing. The likely response to that is he was actually doing a lot of very affirmative things separate and apart from what monitoring the president that forwarded this intentional scheme to disrupt the joint session. So I think that's what will be the key factual distinction the judge will have to resolve.
And obviously there's a lot to unpack about Mark Meadows' role in all of this, but the specific argument he was making today is that he was acting in his official capacity as a White House chief of staff, and therefore this case should be in federal court. Do you think he has a case or an argument to be made in that respect?
Look, he's made the same argument with respect to executive privilege, right? When he refused initially to testify before the grand jury, he said, I'm beyond the reach of this because everything is protected by an executive privilege because I was doing it all in my official capacity. The judge in D.C. disagreed and said there are subject matters that are beyond executive privilege because they were beyond the scope of your responsibility as White House chief of staff. It's essentially the same analysis for the judge in Atlanta. The argument by the DA will be a lot of what Mr. Meadows did was not pursuant to his professional responsibilities as chief of staff, but was a campaign type activity that exceeded the sort of job description of his time as chief of staff.
And then finally, Meadows, of course, under indictment for his role in trying to overturn the election in Fulton County. But In the federal case, he's still considered to be an unindicted co-conspirator. Does he still risk being charged in that case as well?
Yeah, look, yes, absolutely. The special counsel put forward the very surgical indictment that seems designed to be adjudicated quickly. He did not charge all of the co-conspirators as the DA in Georgia did. He charged the main principal proximate cause of the threat to the joint session. But there are a lot of people that have exposure that may yet be charged or may be thinking about some sort of deal to cooperate in lieu of being charged. Meadows is in that category.
All right, Tim Hemke, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Unique perspective on all of this, so we're glad to have you today. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Turning now to some breaking news that we're following, a developing situation in North Carolina, where the University of North Carolina's Chapel Hill campus is on lockdown as police search for a suspect amid reports of shots fired. There's been no injuries or deaths reported. And moments ago, our NBC affiliate WRAL reported that the suspect is now in custody. It comes after the UNC police tweeted this photo of a person of interest in today's armed and dangerous situation, warning people to keep their distance from this person and call 911 if they see them. NBC News Homeland Security correspondent Julia Ainsley joins me now with more. So, Julia, what do we know about this situation?
Well, it looks like we've actually have some good news, at least for the people who have been on lockdown all day, or at least since 1 o'clock in Chapel Hill. The police there, the UNC police, just alerted, all clear, resume normal activities. But this is without the police putting out a statement saying the suspect is in custody. We were able to get that from WRAL that this suspect, this person of interest, was taken into custody. It hasn't been confirmed here by NBC News, and the police haven't officially said that. In fact, they haven't had a press conference. They've actually been a little reluctant on information today, but now, according to their alert system, they're putting out the all clear. This is after they canceled all activities on campus for the day, canceled all classes, but now they're saying it's safe to return. So we'll keep you updated on the situation and to see exactly what we can learn about this person of interest. We were told this was an armed and dangerous person situation. They did not call it a shooting or an active shooting. They didn't talk about people being wounded or injured. There was an earlier report of one shot being fired. And when we were able to track down the identity of this person, who you see here on your screen, we learned here at NBC he's a graduate student at UNC Chapel Hill. So that's what we have right now. We can't independently confirm he's in custody, but right now the police are feeling safe enough to tell people on that campus and in that community that they are no longer under lockdown.
Yeah, so just to reiterate that point, Julia, at one point the campus was on lockdown. They were telling people to shelter in place, but now they've cleared it and said that it's safe for people to leave.
That's right. They have already canceled all those activities and classes, but they can resume daily activities as they were. But we're still looking for more details. Was this a personal motivation, a grievance perhaps? Why was this person armed and dangerous, and what exactly led to this full force law enforcement response that we saw here in Chapel Hill today, just a week after they started classes?
Okay, Julia Ainsley with the breaking news. Thank you so much, Julia. And coming up, Jacksonville in mourning. We'll have the latest on that deadly, racially motivated attack at a Dollar General store in Jacksonville, Florida, as a community tries to come to terms with what happened and remember the victims. Plus, Tropical Storm Idalia is churning through the Gulf of Mexico and is headed for Florida's west coast, where it's expected to intensify into a major Cat 3 hurricane. You're watching Meet the Press now. Welcome back. The community of Jacksonville, Florida is grieving today after 3 black people were shot and killed at a Dollar General store on Saturday. The sheriff's office is calling it a racially motivated attack. The 3 victims were identified as Angela Michelle Carr, Gerald Deshaun Gallion, and Anolt Joseph Laguerre Jr., who was an employee at the store. Police released this video showing the shooter in a tactical vest before opening fire in the parking lot and then inside the store. The 21-year-old gunman then took his own life. Officials say the shooter left behind a suicide note as well as several pages of racist writings. The FBI is investigating the shooting as a hate crime. Last hour, during an event commemorating the 60th anniversary of the March on Washington, President Biden briefly addressed the shooting.
As I've said to the country, we can't let hate prevail, and it's on the rise. It's not diminishing. Silence, I believe, We've all said many times silence is complicity. We're not going to remain silent. And so we have to act against this hate-fueled violence.
And I'm pleased to be joined now by Jacksonville's Sheriff T.K. Sheriff, thank you so much for being here. I know you spoke with President Biden. What was his message, and what did the two of you talk about?
Well, one, he was very supportive of our community. And basically, some of the things he said just then in that clip, how there's no place for hate. And I agree 100%. There's no place for hate in our community and in any community in this country.
So what have you learned at this point in your investigation about the gunman, and what is the status of your investigation at this point?
Well, you know, an investigation like this, when you have something so sudden happen and so tragic, you have to start from the end of that event and move backwards. So we're moving backwards, and we've uncovered some more things that we're going to share with our community in an hour or so. I think it's very important for us to know about. And listen, I don't want to talk about him too much. I do know that he was a racist. He did not like people of color. He didn't like black people. He did not. That was very, very clear in his writings. It was a diary of a madman who, I won't give him mental illness, maybe, but I'll say he calculated what he wanted to do and he carried it out in our city.
So to that end, do you have any idea why he chose to stop at Edward Waters University first? And did he have any connection to the school?
Well, there's some more information coming out, so I would hold on to that thought of Edward Waters University first. We're gonna release some more information here, and like I said, in about an hour or so to our community to explain his movements that day.
Okay, so let's talk about the shooter prior to all of this. He was temporarily restrained under the Baker Act, but then was still able to purchase a gun legally. I know you were frustrated by the fact that he was able to purchase that gun legally. What does Florida need to do? Should it expand its red flag laws to prevent something like this from happening?
Well, in 2017, he was a 15-year-old juvenile, which adds a whole nother layer of protections for people. But I'll say this, he went in under a 72-hour observation. He was not declared mentally ill. Well, from what we have, from the information we were able to gather, the gun dealers were able to do the proper checks from everything we've seen. He was able to purchase the guns illegally, but he used an object to conduct an evil act in our community. And we just don't know why he did it, other than he didn't like a certain group of people, and that was black people.
I want to play for you what Senator Tim Scott had to say about the shooting in Jacksonville. Take a listen.
We saw 3 African Americans die because of the color of their skin over the weekend. That's devastating. We obviously released a statement, but more importantly, we released our prayers. We have to combat violence in this country, and specifically racism, when it leads to death, without any question.
And I guess the question I have for you is, given the fact that he was able to purchase this gun legally, just walk into a convenience store, I mean, how do you prevent this kind of violence? What resources do you need?
Oh, the investigative process is long. So you have to be able, this person has to pop up on your radar for us to be able to track and follow. And there has to be something there outside of a 15-year-old that was submitted into a Baker Act. And we just didn't have that. He purchased those guns illegally. This was an evil man. This was a wicked man who did something with a gun that, you know, quite frankly, it's very difficult to stop if you don't know ahead of time that something like this is going to happen.
Now, we've seen other hate-based shootings in places like Buffalo, New York, Pittsburgh, El Paso. Have you been able to speak to any of those officials from those communities about how they've handled these kind of incidents and what you can do to make sure that your community feels safe again?
We have not spoken to any of those communities. What we have done is we've watched. This is my 32nd year in law enforcement. I have a brilliant team of people in this building that we are working constantly on ways to combat this kind of violence, whether it be racial violence, which quite frankly, this was 100% racist, or just regular violence within our community. We are confident in our agency and what we are able to accomplish, and we are confident in our city and the people in this city. And we're going to still work really hard every single day to make sure we can keep our community members safe.
Sure. We obviously saw the reaction that Governor DeSantis got at the vigil. Do you think that he's personally done enough to address gun violence and in particular race-based hate crimes in your community?
I think the governor's responsibility is to govern this state. It's a sheriff's responsibility to govern a city or to deal with safety in the city. He gives us in our legislature, in our governors, the folks in our local governments give us the tools in place to be able to fight that. So I would say Governor DeSantis is very supportive. He's done the things that he's needed to do for us. I do know that this morning he announced some money to some of our communities and some of the families. It's our job as law enforcement officials to handle law enforcement issues, and we are going to continue to do that and work that.
Okay. Well, Sheriff Waters, you have a monumental task in front of you as this investigation unfolds, and then the future challenges you have keeping your community safe. We appreciate you taking the time, and we'll look forward to that information you say that you're going to release here in the next hour or so. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
And after the break, evacuations are underway as Florida braces for impact. What to expect from Tropical Storm Idalia as it nears Florida's west coast and is expected to intensify into a major hurricane. That's next. You're watching Meet the Press now. Welcome back. Florida is bracing as Tropical Storm Idalia is expected to intensify into a Category 3 hurricane before hitting the state. The National Weather Service warns Idalia could bring dangerous storm surge and flash flooding in parts of the west coast of Florida and the Florida Panhandle as early as tomorrow. President Biden has already approved the state's emergency declaration ahead of the storm. And Governor Ron DeSantis, who has left the campaign trail to help manage the disaster preparations, is back home and urging residents to heed the warnings of local officials.
This is going to be a powerful hurricane, and this is absolutely going to impact the state of Florida in many, many different ways. So please heed the directives from your local officials. Please make the appropriate accommodations and take the appropriate precautions. We'll have all these people there. They're going to be able to help everyone get back on their feet. But you got to do what you need to do to protect yourself and your family on the front end.
Joining me now with the latest on the storm is NBC's meteorologist Bill Caron. So, Bill, update us now. What's the current path of this storm, and do we expect any deviation at all before landfall?
Yeah, Ryan, we never give up on these things until they actually get close to shore. But this one, as far as where it's going, has been pretty consistent over the weekend and right through today. The intensity, that's a different story. Intensity is always the hardest thing to forecast. We're much better at saying where they're going to go than at what intensity they'll be when it gets there. So right now, it's at the top end of a tropical storm. At any time now, it could kick up to a hurricane, and it is now passing from the Caribbean into the southern portions of the Gulf of Mexico. The storm is as close as it's going to get now to the tip of western Cuba. The Hurricane Center's forecast, again, this was about from 11 a.m. Eastern time. The new one's coming out in roughly about a half hour from right now, and I don't expect many changes. They do have it going away from Key West and Fort Myers. That's good news for them. And then, but from Tampa northwards is where you get close to that cone of uncertainty. So the really Apalachicola, Tallahassee, Cross City, Gainesville to Tampa, that's the area of greatest concern. Hurricane Center has it intensifying up to a major hurricane right before a landfall. So my rule of thumb is always assume it could be one worse. So anywhere between a category 2 to 4 at landfall. Our computer models are all these different color lines. The Hurricane Center's forecast is a black line. You notice we're really targeting what we call the Big Bend area of Florida. This is a really swampy, mostly unpopulated region. So if we get a powerful hurricane anywhere in Florida, this is probably where you want it because this is where the least number of people live. But for the few people that do live in this area, this would be one of the worst storms they've ever seen. And as far as the biggest concern goes, it's storm surge, just like it was with Ian and many other powerful hurricanes, 7 to 11 feet above where the water normally is. Florida is very flat. Some of the cities in here are below like 10 feet. So you can almost picture what 7 to 11 feet of water. And that's why they're telling everyone to get out of this region. And even to the south here, this onshore wind out ahead of the storm is going to increase seas, as much as 4 to 7 feet rain, even in Tampa Bay itself. And that's why they've done Zone A evacuations right along the immediate coast. They're getting people out of barrier islands, RV parks, mobile homes, one-story level dwellings. All those people, they're saying they got to get out now.
And what's the biggest concern right now? Is it going to be wind? Is it rain? Is it both? Flooding? What are we most concerned with right now?
Yeah, the number one concern with any tropical storm that takes the most lives is not wind, it is water. And typically it's when the storm surge comes in. The other thing is you get the inland flooding, you get the river flooding, and that also can be deadly. So as far as we get the landfall, we deal with the storm surge Wednesday morning. After that, the storm surge concerns will shift up to the coastline of South Carolina and Georgia, especially with that high tide Wednesday evening during the full moon. That's when we could see very high water levels here, even though the storm will be much weaker at that time. And this area of maroon here, moderate risk of flash flooding. So we're going to have the coastal flooding coming in. At the same time, we're going to be raining from the skies, pouring, and that water is going to be trying to head down to the coast. So we just got way too much water, Ryan, and that's the concern. The winds will have some damage, but if we get that landfall in that Big Bend area where there's not a lot of people living, not a lot of cities or towns, it'll mostly be just wind damage to trees.
All right. Hopefully everyone taking the proper precautions in Florida. Bill, thank you so much for that update. Turning now to Hawaii, where Maui's main power company is pushing back on allegations that it was the cause of the deadly wildfire that killed at least 115 people. Hawaiian Electric says their grids were, quote, de-energized for over 6 hours by the time a fire broke out in West Maui. Last week, Maui County filed a lawsuit against the Hawaiian Electric, claiming the fires could have been avoided if the company shut down power. The company admits an earlier fire on that same day as the Lahaina fire was likely caused by downed power lines, but says that fire was 100% extinguished. Meanwhile, the cause of the deadly Lahaina fire is still under investigation on a local, state, and federal level. Hundreds remain missing and thousands of structures have been destroyed. Up next, the battle for South Carolina. Rival Republican presidential candidates Tim Scott and Nikki Haley both barnstorm their home state as they try to peel off votes from the field's frontrunner in one of the most important contests. You're watching Meet the Press Now. Welcome back. South Carolina voters are seeing some familiar faces on the campaign trail, with former state governor Nikki Haley and their current senator Tim Scott both on the stump in the Palmetto State ahead of their third in the nation primary contest. Scott has 4 events lined up in South Carolina today and is using the occasion to lay out an education plan. Haley just wrapped up a packed town hall just south of Charlotte. It was her first one since last week's debate in Milwaukee. Joining me now to talk about all this is Camila DeChalus. He's the congressional reporter for The Washington Post. Faiz Shakir, the senior advisor to Vermont Independent Senator Bernie Sanders, and Brendan Buck, a former advisor to Republican speakers John Boehner and Paul Ryan, and he's also an NBC News political analyst. So, Camila, let's talk about this. I mean, what do you make of this effort by Haley and Scott, taking different approaches, really largely ignoring President Trump, and Nikki Haley saying stuff like this? Take a listen.
Donald Trump is a friend of mine. It was an honor to serve in the administration and work on foreign policy with him, and I agree with a lot of his policies. But the fact is, I don't know if it's 4 or 5 or 6 or how many indictments it is now, but he's going to spend a lot of time in a courtroom and not on a campaign trail. And my concern is we cannot have Kamala Harris as president. We can't chance this.
Haley did appear to have a pretty good debate performance if you read the reviews after the fact. I mean, where do you think she stands in this race right now?
I mean, I think what's pretty noticeable is that her campaign put out a statement saying that she received the most online donations from that debate in the last 24 hours after that than at any point in time during her campaign. And I think that's really telling. A lot of her supporters came out saying that she was very poised, that when she talked about abortion, that she's really trying to curry favor and try to talk to the independent Republicans or those voters that haven't made up their mind on who to support. Her going after Trump, I mean, that was also a topic of conversation at the debate. And it was very clear that Trump still has a robust support group. I've talked to several voters in Atlanta when he was being arraigned in the courtroom, and a lot of them went out to the streets to show their support for him. So to ignore that, she can't, but also to limit on the fact that this is not just one indictment he's facing. He's facing several criminal charges, and that may take up his time. It's her pointing this out is just something that we kind of all know at this point.
You know, Brendan, if you closed your eyes and you watched Nikki Haley talk at that debate, you might have thought maybe we were back in 2012, 2008, a different time for the Republican Party. She was doing things like defending aid to Ukraine and saying that Trump can't win a general election. But is she campaigning for a party that no longer exists, that Trump is now in control of?
Yeah, that's the big question. And when she had that big moment with Vivek Ramaswamy, it was very impressive. You were like, wow, she really took it to him. But then you have to stop and remember, he's probably closer to where most Republican voters are right now on the issue of Ukraine, which is what they were talking about.
Right.
So you have to step back and say, what are the voters actually looking for? That, what she just said right there, is one of the most interesting things I've seen this entire campaign. That's as forward-leaning, criticizing Donald Trump as I've heard any candidate not named Chris Christie so far. And she did it a little bit in the debate. And if she starts changing her tune, I think that is a great message. You can't outright criticize Donald Trump and say he's just a terribly bad guy if you're a Republican. People are going to tune you out. Make the point that you supported him when he was there, but you need to make an argument of why he can't be your nominee right now. And she started to do that. That's actually really impressive.
Yeah, to that point, Faiz, let's talk about Donald Trump's ongoing legal peril, which seems to grow by the day. Cedric Richmond, who obviously is a top advisor to President Biden, said that Democrats are just not going to touch Trump's legal jeopardy. Take a listen to how he responded to that question.
Well, the president has said from the beginning that he wanted an independent Justice Department, and we have just that. So we're not going to comment. We're not going to focus on Donald Trump's legal problems. We will let the justice system take care of what the justice system should take care of.
Is that a sustainable plan for the Biden campaign? Should they be pointing out these legal troubles of the former president?
Well, a lot of other people are doing that work for them right now, so I think it's an easy posture for them to take, that there's going to be a bunch of commentators on TV like ourselves and others around the country who are talking about Trump nonstop. But I think at some point they are trying to figure out what their posture has to be in order to take him on directly. You're right. I mean, you're implying the answer to the question, which is that you can't hold this position for very long. At some point, you're going to have to move into a general election posture and start making arguments against Donald Trump, many of which are familiar to them. They've made them before, and they'll probably make them again. That said, right now, let him dig his own hole with the internal Republican Civil War.
And, of course, what's going to be unique about all this, Camila, is that there's going to be trials taking place while voters are voting. When you take a look at Trump's legal calendar, you compare that to when the primaries and when the caucuses are going to take place, how is this going to be sustainable for Trump and his campaign?
I mean, that is the defining question, and whether that will sway voters to either detract from him and look at other candidates or to stick by his side. I mean, it can go both ways. I've talked to multiple people across the country just about where they stand in support of him, and it's divided. There's a camp who believe that the charges against Trump are totally invalid, and there's another camp that says that they want a Republican candidate to run for presidency that doesn't have as much baggage as the former president. You know, you see him on the campaign trail, and he talks about draining the swamp, and he can't really make that argument this time around, just given the fact that he was in the Oval Office for 4 years. And so they're kind of on his campaign side, kind of banking on the side that people are going to stick to their disposition and say that the charges against him are completely false and this is a partisan attack against him. But this still remains to be seen. There's still so many months out of the election campaign, and you see these other candidates kind of making a little bit more headway and talking directly to the American people. But whether they're messaging and actually really talking to the voters on getting them to support them, that's what we're going to be seeing in the upcoming months.
To Camila's point, Brendan, could there be a bit of a sugar high with Donald Trump? You know, he's raising money by putting his mugshot all over coffee mugs and T-shirts. They say they've raised $7 million selling merchandise like this. Could people be excited about it right now just because they're caught up in everything? But once the trial starts, once the evidence starts to be laid out, when they see him dealing with the trial as opposed to a campaign, could there be a little bit of fatigue associated there?
Well, I will say I've been waiting for the Donald Trump hangover for 7 or 8 years. And we haven't quite gotten there yet, so we'll see. But I don't think that this timeline could set up any worse. I mean, you're effectively starting the trial, you are starting the trial the day before Super Tuesday. At that point, Donald Trump could very clearly have sewn up the nomination at that point. And then you start going to trial, and day after day after day, you're starting to face these facts that are really ugly, and it could weaken him by the point that it's too late to change your nominee. So if you're Joe Biden, you got to be looking at this like that sets up perfectly for me.
Yeah. So, Faiz, let's turn now to the suggestions that your boss, Senator Bernie Sanders, had for Joe Biden's campaign on the Meet the Press show on Sunday. He basically said that he should just be focusing on the issues, that is what is going to drive voters to the polls. Can he run an effective campaign without mentioning Trump?
No. You've got to mention Trump, but I think you also have to generate enthusiasm around some fights. And Joe Biden, while wonderful at talking about his accomplishments, often ducks the what would be tense fights, whether they be fights against corporations that he's taking on, pharmaceutical companies. They're about to announce these 10 prescription drugs. Have you ever heard them talk about pharma? And I think what you hear us saying is if you're going to move in this progressive policy making, you got to couple it with progressive politics. You got to tell people we're in a big fight. And the historical lineage that Bernie Sanders was referring to was FDR. FDR laid this out after his first term. He said, I welcome the hatred of those who are up against me. We're in some big fights, stick with me, and he wins by a landslide. And I think that's where we're trying to urge a politics that doesn't say, oh, we're doing great things in America while everyone's suffering. You're saying we're doing great things, and we got some big fights to pick on your behalf.
And I think what's important to note is that Bernie Sanders is not the only person that's brought this up. I talked to several freshman Democrats in Congress right now, which they're probably talking to senior advisors around Biden and saying, you need to do more to get out the word message more about what exactly you've done in the last 4 years, because it's just not enough to pass a bill and say, okay, this is how it's helping the American people. People want to see you on the ground actually really touting your accomplishments. So there is a internal dialogue that's happening that I've been hearing others, Democrats really kind of privately lament about, hey, we need to be a little bit more effective on the messaging part. It's not enough just to get bills passed. We really need to tout that, and how we do it is really going to make a difference.
I mean, that is kind of a unique place for Senator Sanders to be, right, Faiz? He's normally the guy saying we're not doing enough.
Right.
So for him to tell the president, you've actually done a pretty good job here, you need to get out and tout that, that's pretty remarkable, right?
Yeah, but it also leveled the reality with people that if you have America who's still suffering, in large part, you don't BS them. You don't say, hey, your life is amazing now because I'm in office.
Right.
Your life is improving, but you're still struggling out there. And that's why I've got left work undone here. And I've got some people who are taking on. That's what we're trying to urge. There's a fight and a friction that's missing in action. Right. And I think Biden is better positioned not only to have the foil against Donald Trump, but to show that he's taking on corporate America as well.
All right, we're running out of time, but quickly, Brendan. Glenn Youngkin, we have some reporting from our Gary Grumbach that he's talking about potentially a 15-week abortion ban in Virginia. Virginia, the last state in the South to not have any restrictions on abortion. Is this him, setting the stage to potentially run for president and jump into this race if the DeSantis campaign in particular continues to falter?
Yeah, I checked in with folks close to them. I think what this is them seeing that what's happening right now for most Republicans is not working. Sitting back, waiting for Democrats to hit you on it is not working. Doing a 6-week abortion ban is not working. I think this is him trying to take a little more control of the situation, maybe find what he's calling a consensus middle ground. Maybe it won't work, but clearly what we know, the path Republicans are on right now isn't working very well politically.
And Camila, it doesn't matter unless he can win back those 2 state houses in the fall election, right?
Right. And I mean, this is something where, again, to your point, this is where the Republican Party is shifting. But you have some kind of dissenting and saying, hey, maybe we're going too extreme on these policies. We need to kind of dial it back because in this upcoming general election, people are going to be looking at where Republicans are standing. And that is going to kind of cast whether they support Republican candidates or they start backing away from them.
All right, Camila, Brendan, Faiz, thank you all for being here. We appreciate it. Still to come, my interview with the top Democrat on the House Select Committee on China, as the Biden administration sends another cabinet member to Beijing in an attempt to ease tensions. That interview's next. You're watching Meet the Press now. Welcome back. Secretary of Commerce, I should say, Gina Raimondo is the latest member of the administration to visit China as the White House seeks to improve ties with Beijing and Washington. Raimondo kicked off the trip with a meeting with her Chinese counterpart, calling it, quote, profoundly important for the two countries to have a stable economic relationship, but added there was, quote, no room to compromise or negotiate on matters of national security. Joining me now is Illinois Congressman Raja Krishnamoorthi, who is, of course, the ranking member on the House committee focused on competition with China. So, Congressman, what do you hope to see stem from this trip? What areas do you think we can build an economic relationship with China that doesn't butt up against our national security issues?
Well, I think that the most important message that I'm hoping that Secretary Raimondo takes to them is that, if we want to have a win-win relationship economically, the CCP needs to cease with its economic aggression, and for that matter, its security aggression. But with regard to economic aggression, that goes to issues of not dumping products below their cost to drive businesses here out of business, but not engaging in cyber hacking, or dumping or cyber theft and forced technology transfer. Those types of practices really sour the mood, the economic mood, and are counterproductive to what I believe the Chinese need to reverse the tailspin that their economy is in.
Now, this is, of course, not the first trip from a cabinet member this summer. We also had Secretaries Yellen and Blinken that have also visited. Is that a good sign, or does it cause you any level of concern over the diplomatic relationship with China?
No, I think the Biden administration should be commended for this level of engagement. When we're talking, we're not fighting. Of course, actions speak louder than words. And so now we need to see actions that kind of match the softened rhetoric on the part of the CCP. And so we'll see in the days and weeks to come whether they actually change their behavior.
So this tension with China comes as the BRICS bloc of developing nations expanded its membership. This is something that Beijing has heavily pushed for. Does that effort make the effort to define the boundaries on our economic relationship that much more important?
I think it's always important, regardless of what's happening with regard to other partnerships, that we explain to the CCP kind of the rules of the road that we expect them to observe as they do business with us. Raiding our businesses in China right now under the guise of counter-espionage laws, shrouding in secrecy various economic data about their economy, and basically doing those things that make it difficult to do business with the CCP are types of actions that they should avoid if they want to improve their relationship.
Are you concerned at all that BRICS becomes an economic bloc that can truly counter the G7?
No, I'm not concerned. I think Russia is apparently one of the BRICS, and Russia is a disaster, as you know. In fact, Vladimir Putin didn't even show up to the BRICS summit because there's a warrant for his arrest issued by the International Criminal Court, and South Africa asked him not to come. So, with leadership like that, I'm not really concerned. And we have strong partnerships with some of the member countries in BRICS, such as India, which is, of course, a key strategic partner to us economically and from a security standpoint.
So you've called the president's executive order restricting certain investments in China as an essential step. Can you improve economic ties while still defending national security? Are those goals always going to be at odds, though? How do you reconcile those two things?
It's very easy. They should not, for instance, use our investments or know-how or technical information that they gain from the U.S. To, for instance, perpetrate the genocide against the Uyghurs in the Xinjiang province, which they're doing using, some of our know-how to perfect their facial recognition technology and artificial intelligence technology. They should also not use our AI against us, whether it's being used in hypersonic missiles or their nuclear weapons program and so forth. That's where I think those export controls are very important.
And what more should Congress do? You said the executive action is not enough. Is there bipartisan support to put in some sort of restraints?
I think that, first of all, I'm very glad about what the Biden administration did. I think that's a very important first step. The question is, what other types of investments might be fueling some of these technologies that could harm our national interests or our values? They could even be passive investments that come from the United States into various funds in China. And so we have to take a look at the broad sweep of these types of investments as we kind of move forward.
Okay, so let's turn now to the 2024 election. And Cedric Richmond, the president's top advisor, said yesterday that the president's not going to make Donald Trump's legal troubles central to his campaign. As a supporter of the president, do you think that's a mistake? And is he going to have to address it come the general election?
No, it's not a mistake. I think everybody knows about Donald Trump's legal troubles and the 91 charges across 4 indictments relative to him. I think President Biden needs to talk about the future. And what is he going to do to improve people's health care, their educational prospects, and their job prospects? I think that's what's most important and on the minds of Americans, and certainly my constituents.
There have been some murmurs that Democrats should perhaps put up a primary challenger to the president. Is that something you think should be considered? Would he even maybe perhaps benefit from a robust primary?
I don't think that there should be a primary challenge. I think President Biden has done a tremendous job. Whether it's the CHIPS and Science Act or the bipartisan infrastructure bill, or it's the Inflation Reduction Act and what we're seeing with regard to the IRA, I think that he has accomplished in 2.5 years what other administrations haven't accomplished across 8 years. And so I believe that he should be our nominee.
All right. Congressman Raja Krishnamoorthi, thank you so much for being here. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
And thank you for being with us this hour. I'll be back tomorrow with more Meet the Press Now. But NBC News coverage continues with Hallie Jackson right now.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.